Well, are you familiar with what Benedict XVI has taught and believes?
When he was Cardinal Ratzinger?
And also currently?
Yes, to some degree, because the Society puts out different things in the Angelus.
Oh, so you're a supporter of the Society of St. Pius X?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm a member of the Society of St. Pius X. The one that here's one thing that I like to find out from you, because I know of other people who are Sedevacantist as well, okay? Were you always Sedevacantist?
No.
Too? No? When did you become?
In the 90s.
Okay. And but you were always saying the Latin Mass for a long time then, or?
This particular monastery, before I was here, I was always opposed to the new Mass.
Okay.
But I think with almost every person who comes to the Sedevacantist position,
yes,
it's as a result of a greater familiarity with certain facts, which lead a person to an undeniable conclusion about the consequences of heresy and so forth. And so it's obviously the obligation of any person professing to be Catholic to accept the man who purports to be the Bishop of Rome as the Pope, unless there is undeniable evidence of an invalid election or manifest heresy. So it's a natural progression for a person to originally regard the man claiming to be the Pope as the Pope until a person sees the evidence which proves that he cannot be the Pope. So, but the evidence that these guys can't be popes is absolutely and totally irrefutable.
Do you believe, for instance, John the 23rd was a pope?
No.
Okay. Do you believe Pius XII was a pope?
Yes.
Okay, up to Pius XII. I've heard that. Yes.
But here's the thing: the Society of St. Pius X treats him like he's not the Pope, because if he is the Pope,
yes,
they have no justification for being outside of the bishops under him. Okay, that's a fact. Their whole position is completely independent. They operate in really a schismatic stance. That's where they hold a schismatic position.
And yet, did you know that Rome recognizes their priesthood?
Well, Rome recognizes the priesthood of the Eastern, quote, Orthodox as well. Just to say that a group has a valid priesthood does not mean that that group holds the true faith or is part of the church.
Okay. Here's a for instance, though. When they make a deacon, let me see now. No, if a brother, let's say one of the brothers, I know one who was a brother for about 16 or 17 years, they applied to Rome to get dispensed of his vows. For different reasons, he wanted to get dispensed. I don't know what the reasons were, but they were valid. And Rome and the whole process had to go, they go through Rome for different things, and Rome accepts.
Well, that doesn't really mean anything, because Rome today, they accept all religions, basically, and they work in concert with the schismatic Orthodox bishops and prelates who don't even regard the papacy. Okay, but let me just quote this for you.
Your name is Brother
Peter.
Peter. Okay.
Let me just quote this for you. This is just so people have a better idea of what the church traditionally. Do you know the definition of schism?
Oh, I have looked it up.
Okay, schism is to refuse communion with the true Pope.
Yes.
Or to refuse communion with true Catholics.
Okay.
All right. Now, these are quotes that are pretty relevant.
Okay.
I just want to get them, so I'm quoting them exactly correctly. All right. For instance, St. Ignatius of Antioch. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, I heard of him.
He was one of the apostolic fathers, those earliest Christian writers among the fathers of the church. He was from the earliest group of them.
Yeah.
Okay, he lived and wrote around 110. Okay, and for instance, in his letter to the Trallians, he talks about how he that is within the sanctuary is pure, but he that is outside is not pure. In other words, anyone who acts without the bishop and the presbytery and the deacons does not have a clean conscience.
Okay.
In other words, that if you operate outside the hierarchy of the church, you are considered schismatic. Now, there could be certain rare exceptions where you would operate for a certain period of time outside the bishop.
Can I suggest something?
Yeah.
For instance, St. Athanasius. He said that the other Catholics had the churches, but they had the faith.
Well, see, that's not a valid argument. Here's why. Because St. Athanasius regarded the Arians as heretics who were not part of the church.
Okay.
The Society of St. Pius X regards the bishops under Benedict XVI as Catholics and part of the church.
Yeah.
That's why they pray for them as the legitimate authorities at their masses. So it's not a valid comparison. I fully agree. That's the whole point. The reason you can operate separately and must from these apostates is because they are not Catholic. They lose their offices. Their episcopal chairs are vacant. Okay, that's the whole point. But if you assert and profess and proclaim that these offices which they hold are occupied by them, then you're condemning yourself out of your own mouth by saying that they occupy them and then being separate from them. Now, now here's another point. One can understand their position maybe for a certain period of time, like when the Vatican II church started, and they're resisting it. They're saying, these are changes, we don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, but after decades and decades, after argument after argument has been presented to them, establishing that there's no way a heretic can hold office in the church. Okay, you cannot have a true pope over a false church and a true church. Okay, there's one fold and one shepherd. It's inexcusable for them to continue to hold this ridiculous position, and it is schismatic.
Okay.
And here's another quote from St. Jerome, just further. This is 386. He talks about, he says, between heresy and schism there is a distinction, that heresy involves perverse doctrine, while schism separates one from the church on account of disagreement with the bishop.
Okay.
And so, not that you could never disagree with the bishop, but the point is that if you're totally separate from the man you think is the bishop, and you're totally outside of his operation and so forth, that's schism. And so, that's not the only problem. That's just one angle of it.
Okay. Now, I'll ask you a couple of questions then, okay? For instance, we have a great, and I believe is a saint, even if he was canonized by the modern church, but just by what he's done, is Padre Pio, okay? He was like a curio of ours. He had great gifts.
Yeah, we have a whole book about him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you believe it was a very holy priest?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Now, how do you explain then, for instance, you people don't recognize John the 23rd as a pope or Paul VI, and yet he recognized both as popes?
Right, because holy men can be wrong about things. They can fail to recognize certain facts, and even if God reveals certain things to them, he doesn't reveal everything, like St. Vincent Ferrer, who lived during the
Greek. That's exactly what I was saying.
He followed anti-Pope Benedict XIII. He thought he was the Pope.
Yeah.
He was simply wrong.
Okay.